Hello everybody, welcome back to another video for the day. Now we're going right back into r/talesofneckbeard, but beforehand, if you haven't already, be sure to like the video, comment down below during the video if you see something you like, and if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications. Thank you, and let's get right into this cringy content. Let's go! Our first story comes to us from usernames The Strange Toaster. Adventures of Ken, the cousin-loving neckbeard. Great, I'm getting Sweet Home Alabama vibes right off the bat. Okay, so I am reposting this after having removed all of my posts on the topic, and is now safe for me to do so. Ken is no longer in my life as of now, so I can post without worrying that he will come across it. Ken is my cousin. Ken is also a neckbeard. An interesting thing to note is Ken, while having bad hygiene, is in no way ugly. Yes, he is rather plain looking, however, he is greasy, edgy, and a hardcore weeb. I am a socially awkward teenage girl who is heavily involved with the fine arts, D&D, and I DJ my school dances, as well as set up for them. Mark is a friend who, while not what would be called a Chad, is intimidating enough to scare neckbeards off. He and his girlfriend are some of my closest friends. Violet is Mark's girlfriend. Violet and I look similar to one another, but she has the added value of being super timid and being quite the anime fan. The whole mess started when I performed at a school play. Ken saw me and determined that I was his dream girl. Ken introduces himself and asked to have lunch with me. I politely declined, claiming that my friends don't like new people around without warning. He accepts hesitantly, then walks away. Not having spoken 50 words to me, he dumps his girlfriend, super con girl, and felt so bad for her. He then asked me to the upcoming school dance. I don't outright say no, which I should have, and gave him an "I'm not sure if I'm even allowed to go, and if I do, I'm working the dance" excuse. Thinking that what I said was a polite rejection, I go on my merry way. He comes to my class and asks me in the halls, even stops me from getting on the bus. I then finally told him no and to buzz off. He sadly walks away. I finally get some common sense and tell my mom. Apparently rejecting him was a good thing because she tells me that I'm his cousin, distant but cousins nonetheless. I tell Ken this and he just says that it was a poor excuse to reject him. I begin avoiding Ken like the plague for the rest of the school year. I let Mark be my bodyguard for like a week, but eventually Ken started leaving me alone. Enter Violet and Mark. Violet and Mark are a really happy couple who both enjoy many of the same things. However, Ken decides that if he cannot have me, he would have the next best thing, my close friend from whom resembles me. He first flirts with her for a little bit, and then homecoming rolls around. The homecoming dance in my hometown is very casual, though some people do try to look nicer than usual. I'm setting up the audio equipment with my father when Ken comes around about a half an hour too early for the dance, decked out in a tux, holding a bouquet of flowers. He comes up and chats with me, even tries giving me the flowers. Luckily, my dad knew about Ken and shooed him off each time. The dance starts and Violet with Mark in tow show up. Ken tries to give her the flowers, gets rejected, and nearly gets beat up by Mark. Ken doesn't give up, and he makes Violet so uncomfortable she goes home. The rest of the night was uneventful outside of the little fake tantrum by Ken. A few months later, I'm going shopping with my grandmother when we see Ken and his guardian, also his grandmother. The two old ladies get excited and catch up as they are related. Ken asks me if this was my adoptive grandmother, to which I say no. His grandmother even confirms it, as we have photos of us together as kids. Neither of us remember each other. Ken gets it in his head that we were in some sort of anime where I was his childhood friend and that we were finally reunited. Remember how I said Ken wasn't ugly? Well, some girl asked him out, and he flatly rejects her. I happen to know the girl. Small rural town, everyone knows everyone, so I ask Ken why he rejected her. He says that it's because she isn't me. I remind him that we were never going to be a thing. This causes him to go on a rant about how I am the reason he can't get a girlfriend, all because he keeps comparing them to me. I stop being nice at this point and tell him that that isn't my problem. Then I walk away. A few months later, during summer break, he texts, to this day, I have no clue how he got my number, me telling me that he knows what he did was wrong and that he wants to get help. I tell him that if that's true, then that's great. It goes downhill when he says that all he needs to get better is my friendship. I don't even have to be his girlfriend, just his friend. I tell him that while I supported his decision to get help, I was not comfortable with being his friend. He insists that he needs me in order to get the help he needs, and I tell him that I have my own problems and that I wasn't qualified to help him. Then I block him. Fast forward to now, and he has become a creepy wreck of a guy. He doesn't know anything about personal space, he makes inappropriate jokes, and I now cannot avoid him during school hours. Luckily, he did a series of stupid things and got thrown out of school. Well, that's it for Ken, the cousin-loving neckbeard. I learned a lot from this creep. For example, just say no the first time, and don't feel guilty if they do something stupid because they reject you. I'll have to say, that is definitely something that's a lot to start off for the first video, or first story of the video. Like, seriously, I'm glad that everything is over. Things were really weird just in the middle of it all, and I can't believe that he legitimately did not care that you guys were blood related. I feel like he would be that type of person to make reference to the whole age is just a number thing by saying genetics is only the entire makeup of our human being. It doesn't matter that you're my cousin. Our next story comes to us from username Bunnable, a gaming shop experience. So I've been lurking on this subreddit for a while, and I finally broke down and made an account because frankly I have too many neckbeard experiences and my friends are tired of my salt. I am the textbook definition of beard bait and have been ever since I turned 14, so going on 10 years now. I have been deep into the hellhole, which is anime, since ye old days of Blockbuster Video. I love games of both video and card varieties. I'm a regular congoer and a vid cosplayer, so much so that I've mitigated from just walking the floor in costume to competing and presenting at conventions. When not in cosplay, I eagerly experiment in other fun niche fashions such as steampunk, morigirl, and lolita. Add to all that my double major is in environmental science and English literature, which covers both sides of the competing intellectual neckbeard factions, and a dollop of an overly bubbly demeanor, and you can see why I suffer from an onslaught of neckbeard. Okay, I actually really love that scientific name. Seeing as this is my very first Reddit post in all of ever, I thought I would be prudent to start off with a low-key beard encounter that happened fairly recently. It goes a little something like this. So I play somewhat uncommon TCG. I say somewhat because trying to find anything besides Magic, Pokemon, or Yu-Gi-Oh! At a store not specializing in cards is a shot in the dark, but I digress, and my favorite local store for it is recently closed. They do have a sister branch only 10 minutes away, but my branch was specifically the gaming branch of the store, and the sister branch doesn't have nearly enough stock or variety to keep me happy for long. So I have started a quest to find my new favorite store that isn't 1.5 hours away from my closest. In my most recent bout of frantic Googling, I found a store that's about 30 minutes away from me that I had never been to and decided to try my luck. The store seemed pretty average when I pulled up in my car. It's your basic hole-in-the-wall at the end of the strip mall, with the windows covered in so many gaming promotional posters that you can't even see in. Now, as I mentioned before, I have a pretty varied kind of fashion sense, but I treat trying out a new store as a bit of a job interview, and I learned a long time ago not to make too heavy of an impression on the first encounter, which meant basically a flowy sundress, a cardigan, and a bow headband. Very cute, very girly, very not what people are used to seeing in a game shop. I was also alone for this quest, not ideal to be sure, but I don't like going into the game shops until I'm very comfortable there after years of bad experiences. But no one was free, and with how busy I was with work, I knew I wouldn't get another chance for a while. So stealing my nerves, I left the car and proceeded with caution to the door. I knew immediately upon entering that I would once again come up empty in my search for the coveted TCGs. It was obvious that the shop's specialty was Warhammer. The only cards on display were a case of Magic and a smattering of Pokemon at the store counter, and the rest of the store was covered, floor to ceiling, in Warhammer memorabilia. Now, I have no problem with Warhammer. I can see the appeal, though I've never tried it myself, but it is very much not what I was looking for. My disappointment must have shown on my face because the cashier asked if there was anything he could help me with, and in a worried tone. I smiled politely and asked about my card game, and the guy hissed through his teeth in a way of a retail worker who knows they don't have anything. I told him it was fine. He was very sweet and offered to text some of the other shops he knows, see if he had one in stock. Honestly, I was touched and accepted his offer. I decided to look around the shop to see if there was anything there that caught my interest, because if the cashier was going to go out of his way for me, then I was going to buy something to make it worth his effort. I had just moved to the wall covered in various figures and paints to see if anything caught my eye. I think some could look really neat when incorporated in steampunk props. Please don't witch hunt me over it. When the herd arrived, a whole bevy of beards shoved their way through the door of this little game shop. I'm talking 8 to 12 full-grown neckbeards of the most stringent definition. There were fedoras galore, black and red cargo pants covered in chains, at least 4 trench coats with ominous food splotches all over, anime waifu shirts, even one a hagao shirt, my hearty mix of greasy ponytails and ill-conceived middle parts, and every single one of them had some form of beard on his neck. It was a glorious, horrifying sight. They all shuffled over to the tables at one side of the store, the one specifically made for Warhammer games matches, toting with them boxes of figures as well as salty snacks and the illustrious dew of mountains. It was then they loudly started unloading their bounty of figures and munchies that I came to the realization that while they had been entering, the other 2 customers that had been in the shop when I had come had exited. That left me alone in a game shop with a bunch of neckbeards and one distracted cashier. I felt a pitch drop into my stomach. This was a cringeworthy, repressed memory in the making, and I already have enough of those to deal with, thank you very much. Luckily, at the moment, most of the herd hadn't yet noticed me. I know many neckbeards have motion-based vision when it comes to prowling for miladies, so if I just stood still, they wouldn't notice me. But eventually, one of the grease beasts would look up from his Cheetos and see a small girl in a dress, and then they would all be onto me. With a pit in my stomach, I came to the conclusion that my best chance of getting out here is unscarred. It was to make a break for the relative safety of nice cashier man and his close proximity to the door. I still wanted his intel, but if I needed to bolt a neck, I was going to. I took a steadying breath and straightened my posture, putting on my best resting birch face. I find looking like you could easily commit white-collar murder and not care is a good enough deterrent for the more lily-livered of beards. With that thought in mind, I slowly wandered back to the front counter, hugging the wall shelves and not letting my eyes stray over to the conglomerate over the plate tables. I made it to the counter with no issue, thank goodness, and found that nice cashier guy was on the desk computer on Facebook with 5 messenger boxes open. He told me the first 3 places he tried also didn't stock it, the 4th one did, but they only had 1 box, and he was still waiting on the last one to get back to him, but he had a good feeling. I thanked him profusely for his efforts, and he asked me to wait a few more minutes to see if the other shopkeeper would respond. I reluctantly agreed to wait it out. I really didn't want to be in there with the horde any longer than necessary, but my thirst for those sweet cards won out. The cashier, bless him, he really was a gem, started talking to me about my favorite TCG, just the basic what deck I ran and why, if I'm casual or competitive, if I play anything other TCGs, or if it's just the one. I was happy to babble onto him about my cards. I got into it fairly recently, and I run some fun but not meta decks. I'm pretty casual, but I do compete in the occasion. I managed to get to the regional tournament this year, but didn't place, and that I used to be really competitive in Yu-Gi-Oh, but I switched to this after Yu-Gi-Oh stopped being fun for me. I was surprised that he actually knew a bit about the TCG, which was very cool, and that he had some options for some sleeves and dice that might complement my deck. I was so distracted by this conversation that I didn't notice the imminent beard encounter until it was too late. I smelled him right before I saw him. My back was turned to the swarm as I was having my chat with the cashier, so I didn't notice right away that there was a sudden lack of chatter. I was halfway through a sentence about a particular card effect I enjoy using when a stench the likes of a gym locker can only aspire to hit my nostrils. Now listen, I'm no shrinking violet when it comes to stink. I have 2 brothers that had been playing hockey since before I could walk and avoided showering before hitting before a big game because it was unlucky. I also had an internship in college and dealt primarily with amphibians and reptiles, not exactly the most pleasant smelling of creatures. The smell though, it was the most rancid BO and a cat box that had ever been emptied and had a baby pile of garbage. I think my nose hairs melted back into my face. It was abominable. A man said far too close to my back for comfort, sneer audible in his voice, "We are waiting to start, sir." There it was. The cringe was real and I was deep in the thick of it. I straightened up from where I had been leaning against the counter and turned my head to witness the absolute bearditude that had graced us with his presence. This guy was presumably the alpha beard based on the smug look on his face and the fact that all the other beardies were still sat at the table and looking at with the horror/interest at what was about to go down. He was a ginger fellow in a pair of those Hot Topic pants with all the pockets and chains and a heavy metal t-shirt stretched over his generous middle for a band that I am too much of a pleb to know. The fedora on his head had a smattering of skull patches and sloppy glued onto one side. I know it was glued too because it seeped out of the side of his patches, and a red craft store feather poking out of the other. He wasn't wearing a trench coat, but I kind of wish he had because I could see his overgrown pit hair poking out of the sleeves of his t-shirt. His beard was patchy at best, missing its chin almost entirely and looking more like a scraggly pair of mutton chops got too big for their britches. Overall, a very grody sight to behold. I was still too surprised by the appearance of this person, still way too close to my back to really understand what he'd said. Luckily for me, the cashier was unfazed. Weekly 40K doesn't start for another 10 minutes, the cashier said without missing a beat. He pointed over his shoulder to the big digital clock on the wall. When that clock hits 5, then I'll start taking names. Everyone's hero ready. The great beard scoffed, flicking his chin up and making his hat plumage bobble. Stop coverting with that female and get on with your proper duties. We won't be held up just because you mistakenly think you can score with this lost little wife. There was an honest-to-goodness gasp from the peanut gallery at the tables. I could tell from the bug eyes and the open mouths that they hadn't expected that to come from their fearless leader here. I myself was feeling a little off kilter. I mean, I'd never been called a wife before. Has anyone else gotten that one? I'm honestly curious. My shock quickly turned to embarrassed anger. I was so ready to rip this guy at least 2 new buttholes, but the cashier beat me to it. I know I don't need to remind you about the store's conduct policies, he said venomously. Obviously, this wasn't his first clash with the Alpha Beard. I'm giving you your second strike, 1 more and you're out of the tournament season. Now, if you want to play at all today, you're gonna have to sit down and shut up while I help out this paying customer that was here before you, and I'll start 40k when she's done with her purchases. This got the beardy all kinds of steamed up. His face turned so red he looked like a ripe tomato. With how ginger he was, it almost looked like his head was on fire. Truly, it was a sight. It was clear he wanted to escalate the situation, but his gang of groupies realized a losing fight when they saw it and begged him to come back to the table. He gave me one last glare. I'm sure it would have been intimidating if his bottom lip hadn't been quivering ever so slightly before turning his heel and stomping like a toddler back to the seat and flopping into it with a jiggle. I'm so sorry about that, the cashier said to me quietly. My little sister has to deal with the same thing when she goes to Pokemon tournaments, and I hate it. The store got back to me though, and they do have your game in stock. They also have a weekly tournament for it if you're interested in that. It's just a bit of a drive. Thank you for your help, I said, with the cards and also with him. If you really want to thank me, pretend to shop for something for a minute, he said with a mischievous grin. I want to make him wait for a bit. I happily spent the next 30 minutes loudly hemming and hawing over Dyson's sleeves. I even had him take out the Yu-Gi-Oh! Single so I could look through their collection, audibly discussing different strategies I could implement if so and so card was added to my deck, although it was the Alpha Neckbeard sat getting redder and redder in his seat. The gaggle of Subbeard switching between looking at him worried and then me flexed my little bit of nerd knowledge with the cashier. I left the shop with a new set of oversleeves, about $25 in rares to start a Link Summon Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck, and the pinkest, most glittery dice they carried in stock, along with the address of the next shop in my quest for card games. On my way out, I made a point of telling the cashier that I would be sure to tell all my friends that played Warhammer to check out that shop. After all, it seemed that their usual weekly group could use a bit more feminine ingenuity. I ducked out of there with the sound of a furious "ree" as he heals at the Alpha finally lost it. I have been back since, but I'm so curious to know if he got that last strike or not. I'm legitimately wondering if he got that 3rd strike as well, and honestly, if the audience for that card shop does happen to get any more diverse, I feel like that strike will be coming up real quick. Alrighty, that's gonna have to be it for the video. If you would like what you had seen, be sure to like the video, comment down below what you liked about the video, and subscribe to the channel if you have not, and turn on them notifications. Check out the Discord in the description box down below, and I will be sure to see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching, and bye-bye.